everyone. Hope y'all got some sugar in your system. You are feeling re-energized. We got Whitney bookending us, so we know we're going to get to see. Thank you for that introduction. It always sounds ridiculously long. And one last line of that is, Aisha is happily married with 5 children, including one who's here, her first one. Mini over there in the corner. So I gotta start by giving Equal Space a shout out. You guys just do a phenomenal job. Mazina. They've been here over 10 years, and they're just really driven. They have such a clear purpose. They fill a need in the market, and they constantly innovate. So I just think it's so appropriate for them to be hosting this Women in Innovation event. I'm supposedly expected to speak for like 30 minutes, 25, 20, like 10? Can I do like 10?
I was getting 30, but it's going to be a 15 minutes.
So we can do like 10 and then like have 15 minutes of Q&A. So forgive me because I am going to read. And I will try not to sound like I'm reading. But I am not going to be chatting about business, economic development, which is usually what I'm talking about when I'm hosting panels or I'm doing guest speaking. Not business, not tech. They asked me to share my personal story and my personal journey, which makes me ridiculously uncomfortable. So I'm going to do a lot of comic relief just for my own purposes, not for yours. Thank you, Lindsay. I appreciate you, girl. So yes, I'm going to share a little bit about how I got where I am in hopes of inspiring or boring some of you in the audience. This is a little bit of an unexpected keynote, and I think that's what I'll focus on today, kind of being outside of your comfort zone and in spaces that you didn't expect to be in, but you take the jump anyway. I'll also talk a little bit about what Medina asked me to cover. So I actually left my rings at home. I was running late. I thought this was 11:45, not 12:45. But I wear 2 rings. I wear my wedding bands, and then on another ring, on my other finger, I wear a number 3. And there's a range of reasons why I wear a number 3. Partly just because I'm always moving, and it's easy for me to compartmentalize things in 3s. It's easy for me to think about things in beginning, middle, and end. I have 5 children in total, 2 that I've inherited from my husband, but 3 of my own. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, morning, afternoon, night. I can go on and on. So you'll see some of that kind of theme throughout my chat today. And I'll focus on the phases of kind of beginning, career, middle, and I'll just leave off the end because I'm assuming I'm not at the end yet. So I'll start at the beginning, sharing a little bit about me and my journey to kind of give you some context. My brother and I were raised in a household under our mother who's fiercely talented, smart, and actually left a blank there because I was trying to figure out a really nice way. Hi, Mama Latina. Oh my God, that was so perfect. I realized Mom was right here. So I left that part blank because I was trying to figure out a really nice way of saying strict, but it was a little less than strict. It was structured. Oh, this is going to be interactive. Something like that. She was very clear. Strong Latina household, but my buddy was in the house. Nothing like, there was no vagueness. It was your boundaries and everything were extremely clear. She was an activist, a teacher, and a creative, which gave us a strong appreciation for and foundation for the arts, justice, and education. I am who I am because of the foundations of many strong women. 3 I'll focus on today. First being my mother, Sylvia, who taught me not to be afraid, to be strong, to stand up for what you believe in, no matter who is or who is not next to you. To always know that what you're talking about, and if you don't try to fake it. To think about and view the world critically and to never stop learning. In fact, she continues to teach me whether I want to be taught and schooled or not. And the second person, my high school teacher, Miss Wendy Violette, a beautifully tolerant, patient, and funny English teacher who exposed to me Shakespeare and conflict resolution. She taught me how to negotiate without appearing combative, how to work towards resolution without being a pushover, and how to effectively communicate with anyone at any level. In fact, the skills that I developed in high school, I use to this day in every relationship and partnership I have. And the third woman is a dear friend of mine, Alice. I began watching Alice's children when I was 16 years old and they were 4 and 6. She's my daughter's godmother and one of those people who start out as a stranger, become a friend, and evolve into family. She taught me to be free. Her house was and still is always filled with family and friends and has always been welcoming, never any judgments, people from a range of backgrounds with so much love and freedom in their hearts. I was not surprised about 10 or so years ago when she decided to become a celebrant and officiate weddings with a focus on same-sex, interracial, and non-traditional marriages. So this and much more is my foundation as I came of age. At the age of 19, boom, I had my first child as a junior in college. The reaction was surprising. You're so smart, how could you? This will deter your education and your career. Will you drop out? Wow, I'm glad it was you and not me. And most of these were from my own family members. The comments were much worse at work. At the time, I was working at Morgan Stanley, one of the world's leading financial services firms, and I was in school full-time. Very little changed. I stayed in school, I graduated in 5 years, which is like the norm now, and I returned to work probably before I should have. But it's in those moments that your faith and your resolve are strengthened. I learned a lot at Morgan Stanley, but the thing that stood out the most to me was the insane work ethic and hours the bankers put in. It was the opposite side of the same coin that I saw in my mother. I saw her work hard. I even sat in the back of the classroom when she was getting her master's degree, and I know how hard she hustled to provide for and set an example for my brother and I. It became clear to me that I would get nothing by doing anything half-assed. Till this day, when I'm in, I'm all in. So much so that it's hard to turn off. So for those entrepreneurs that know you text me late at night and early in the mornings and on the weekends, you can testify, I'm ridiculously available. I moved up while I was at Morgan Stanley. I went on to pursue a master's degree and began my career in nonprofit upon graduation. So we are now in the second phase of my life called the middle, where I've learned the bulk of my professional lessons. So today I'll focus on a few of those lessons in 3s: perseverance, power, and purpose. Perseverance. So it's not easy being in these rooms. It's not easy being the youngest, the only woman, the only person of color, the other, and however that is defined through ability, religion, or sexual orientation. I've sat at many tables representing the only many times. From financial services to environmental education to manufacturing to economic development. You think I'm just a glutton for being uncomfortable. But I don't want to be the only person. In fact, I had this conversation with a colleague the other day who questioned if I was open to having more women in economic development at the helm. Here's a struggle, my personal struggle, behind that conversation and that mindset. If we are comfortable being the only woman, the only person of color, the only fill in the blank, then we are fundamentally saying we are okay with inequality. That our needs and our desires and our personal gains are more important than the pursuit of equity. And I realized that the only reason that I was asked that question was because they didn't know my character. They didn't know what I believe, who I am, the role Sylvia, Alice, or Wendy have had in my life, the world I want to help create for Kayla, Khalil, Elias. This brings me to my second P, power. With power, as we all know, comes great responsibility. I will not preach, but I will say that over the last 15 to 20 years of my life, I've seen how dangerous power can be. But I've also seen how powerful it can be to use that power for influence and to genuinely, deliberately create and affect change. The work I do is meant to be disruptive. It's meant to help shift power from the hands of the few into the hands of the many. It's meant to get more girls in the room, shout out to She Wins, for the benefit of the girls and the boys. It's meant to shift purchasing power, to shift hiring powers, to empower and to democratize power in a way that is ultimately disruptive. Maybe because I was raised by an activist who embedded in us a strong sense of justice, that I still believe in the ability to shift power and to use it to influence change. Power dynamics are not pleasant, and I do not want to paint a fake rosy picture about some utopian alternative universe where we overthrow institutional power and live in some egalitarian society. We all must still work within these systems, trying to disrupt them from the outside or the inside. Some will be more drastic measures than others, but there are three things that stand out for me when I think about power. One, I already started with, which is using your power for good, for influence. Two, is that the easiest way to lose your power is by giving it up. Don't assume that you do not have any power. In fact, I'll give you a good example. When I worked at the Brooklyn Navy Yard, I had a love-hate relationship with a colleague who was always pushing me to get out of the weeds, to be intentional about where I sat at the table, literally, how I positioned myself and assumed a leadership role. I was so focused on the work that I didn't care about that. I was winning, making an impact, and part of a team that was doing groundbreaking work in economic development, creating jobs, closing the gap between the community and the economic engine that sat in their backyard. And he or she was worrying about what seat I took at an event or at a senior staff meeting. In retrospect, I understand what she was trying to do and draw my attention to. I had power that I was giving up. How often do we defer to others that we think are better positioned or more knowledgeable? What I took from her years of nudging me was less about position and more about owning the power of your space and not being afraid for others to see it. My third point under power is a quote, actually. When you're accustomed to privilege, equity feels like oppression. And I heard that at a Forbes event the other day, and it blew my mind, so I need to say it again. When you're accustomed to privilege, equity feels like oppression. And there's so much in the climate in our country right now that when you think about privilege and the reactions that are going on, it's really feeling like oppression to folks. And for the first time, their eyes are being opened. This brings me to my last P, purpose. In December of 2016, after about a year on the job at Newark CDC, I was appointed acting president and CEO. The role was, again, in an acting capacity, and they had intentions of hiring someone else, and I actually wanted them to. I wanted to stay below the radar and focus on the work. I was very clear on my focus. But about 4 months later, in March of 2017, during Women's History Month, I decided to throw my name in for consideration. There were many factors that went into my decision to apply. One happened at this very event hosted by Equal Space when I was asked to speak. You can make me tear up right now? Don't do that. Don't do that. All right, okay, there I'm back. In my preparation, I dug up some stats about women, and I came across one that sticks with me to this day. Men apply for positions when they meet 60% of the qualifications. Women apply for positions when they meet 100% of the qualifications. I was undervaluing my impact, my role, and how qualified I was. More importantly, the outpouring of support from people telling me that I was supposed to be in the role was overwhelming. Needless to say, I took the job. I stayed in for over 2 years, and I helped increase the amount of development in our city underway by over $2 billion to where we are today at 4.7 billion. I helped lead the city's bid for Amazon's second headquarters, and more impactfully, I helped hundreds of small business owners and entrepreneurs access capital, launch their businesses, learn how to scale, and strengthen their business savvy. I found myself in rooms meeting with people who were once my bosses, who were leading multi-million-dollar enterprises, who were billion-dollar philanthropists and advocates, who were doing this work around the entire world, and now had an interest in our city due to the work that we put in, raising its profile, demonstrating expertise, and convening stakeholders who collectively are dedicated to community wealth. Something has to drive you. If there is no purpose, no core foundation, no North Star, you will feel like you're spinning your wheels, drowning in the details, distracted by the detractors, and there will be many of them, and easily swayed. When you are purpose-driven, that doesn't mean that you are creating your own path. It means that the reasons you do the work don't change. It's why I could change industries or assume different roles, because my title doesn't matter. My industry doesn't matter. My role, my impact, my service, and my steps are unwavering because they are ordered. I now run the Newark Alliance, a nonprofit in the city that convenes and leverages the power of the corporations and anchor institutions to have the greatest economic and social impact. I still get to work closely with our amazing leadership in Mayor Rajay Baraka in the Economic and Housing Development Department. I'm still developing strategies and rolling out initiatives that align with my purpose and our collective desires to make Newark a national model for equity. But when I left, everyone was surprised. Nobody expected me to leave at the peak of something that was helping to advance Newark's revitalization. Next to the mayor, I had started to become the face of economic development, and I was constantly being interviewed about Amazon and more. But this brings me to my last point. Innovation to me is being centered in your purpose, but being willing to change everything and anything else at any time. To be daringly disruptive without needing to change who you are in the process. Find your tribe, your people who you're aligned with and want to build with, but ultimately find your purpose and do not waver. Innovate. How many minutes did I fill it?
18.
Are you crying like
So for now, we have time for a few questions. So if you have one, please raise your hand. Please. Hello. Please stand.
Hi, my name is Tanaya Farrell. I'm 14 years old, and I was born and raised in the city of Newark. And my question to you is, if you could travel back in time, what would you tell your 14-year-old self?
Great question. I think I try to tell my 8 and 17 and 22-year-old that. This is hard because 14 was a very awkward year for me. Just going into high school, middle school was terrible. I feel like probably middle school is always terrible, right?
It gets better.
But it gets better. And then at 14, being a freshman, I was finally kind of coming into my own. I don't know that I would change anything. I would just probably want more people around me who saw my uniqueness, my creativity, saw me as an individual, right? And so we don't always gravitate towards those people. So my advice to you would be to, there's a, maybe I'm going Mama Medina now. There's a saying in Spanish, you show me who your friends are and I'll show you who you are. And so to think very purposefully about who you're surrounding yourself with and the energy and the support that they're giving you.
Good afternoon. First of all, just thank you. This is the tearing section over here. We're all looking for tissue because it was just so powerful. And thank you for sponsoring She Wins to be here today. Shout out to my City Nash sisters over here, all the girls' organizations represented. My question is about just in terms of your experience, both as a young woman professional and then also a mother. What are your thoughts on some of the biggest challenges that our young women are facing today? And what advice would you give them on how to confront and overcome that challenge?
I think the added level of pressure that you guys are under is just so different. You know, we had different challenges, but the world can feel very overwhelming. And it's easy to shut down, turn off, seek other outlets that aren't healthy. So my advice, mental health is a serious issue. And I don't think that we as a community, as people of color, take it as seriously as we should. I was on a panel the other day with the superintendent of schools, Roger Leone, and the mayor. And the mayor made a comment that hit me hard. He said, and we were talking about trauma and trauma-informed care, and he said, you know, in our communities, we look at people that kind of go through so much as if that makes them stronger, as if that makes you tougher, right? Like, oh, I did this, I went to this, I got shot, I got stabbed, my mother left me, my dad this and that, and we look at that as if it's a badge of honor, right? And so we are reinforcing trauma and what it feels like to deal with loss and challenges and dysfunction, right? And we use that as a badge of honor, and it's not. It doesn't make us stronger, it makes us weaker, right? It might build some level of resilience, but it's actually chipping away. And so I think the challenges that come with that around mental illness should be taken far more seriously, because there's stigma in that word as if, oh, I'm not mentally ill. There are various forms of anxiety, of depression that we deal with all day, every day in different forms that we have to start calling it out and naming it and seeking help.
Is there one last question? Right there, my love. It's a projection time.
Okay, great. Audrey Torres, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Okay. At what point did you realize your purpose, and during your journey, did you ever forget it? And if so, how did you regain focus?
Ooh, that's a good question. So I didn't have like this aha moment. I think we all know what we're passionate about, what we gravitate towards, and then whatever it is, whatever you believe in, God reinforces that. The universe reinforces that. The sayings of what you put out come back to you are genuinely true, right? And so I think what happened for me was I knew what I was supposed to be doing and touching and impacting people's lives, whether they were, I used to have my own PR company when I was really young. I was working with like D-list artists. And I put everything into that individual, because if I see somebody that believes in themselves, I'm going to invest in you like you will never believe. And so that was reinforced every position that I had, or every time I served, that I saw, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. There's a quote somewhere, I don't remember exactly how it goes, but it says, you know, if you waste your time investing in other people's dreams, you'll never invest in your own, or something like that. And I remember the first time I read that, I thought, but that's my dream, is to invest in other people's dreams and to just watch that come to life. So I just had these various points in my career and my life, personally and professionally, which is why I have so many mentees, is if I can do anything just to inspire you and help you advance in your greatest potential and what you're meant to be and what your purpose is, that's my purpose. That's why I'm here. Thank you.